Welcome in. It is fantastic to have you joining us for this deep dive today. I'm your host, and I'm here with our resident expert to guide you through this.
Hey everyone, really great to be here and get into this one with you.
So, we know you are constantly looking for that edge. You're trying to spot that next major tectonic shift happening, right under the surface of your industry.
Right, you want to stay ahead of the curve.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But let's be honest, you also do not want to get buried under an avalanche of information overload or tech jargon that doesn't actually apply to your day-to-day.
Yeah, which is a real risk. It is a delicate balance.
Yeah.
Filtering the endless noise to find the actual actionable signal is harder than ever right now.
It really is. And the signal we are tuning into today is a massive one, even though it is happening almost invisibly in the background of the business world.
Hmm.
Our mission for this deep dive is to explore how a completely new wave of AI application builders is quietly killing the bloated, incredibly expensive enterprise software contract.
It's a huge shift.
It's massive. We're going to look at how small teams and everyday operators are suddenly being empowered to build their own custom, quote unquote, micro software, and how that's fundamentally changing how companies spend money and manage workflows.
The material guiding us today is just incredibly insightful.
Yeah, we are pulling directly from market intelligence and some deep dive articles published by 4AI World.
Great stuff in there.
Specifically, we're leaning into a fascinating piece titled The Rise of Micro Software, Disrupting the Enterprise CRM Tax. It's a must read, but, we are going to extract the core mechanics for you right here.
Yeah, and to really appreciate the magnitude of what's happening, we have to establish the broader context that 4AI World lays out for us.
Right, set the stage for us.
They refer to this shift as entering the AI engine room. Think about where we were even 12 months ago. AI was predominantly about chatbots.
Oh, yeah, like summarizing a PDF or drafting a polite email to a client.
Exactly. But we are moving rapidly past that superficial phase. The sources point out that we are now entering the era of reasoning engines.
I want to pause there because that term reasoning engines, it gets thrown around a lot. What does it actually mean for you, the person just trying to run a team or a business?
It's a great question. The sources specifically point to developments like Gemini 3 DeepSeek. Unlike older AI that simply predicted the next word in a sentence to sound conversational, these reasoning engines actually map out a logical sequence of steps to solve complex, multi-layered problems.
So they're thinking multiple steps ahead.
Yes, they don't just write a polite email anymore. They can architect a working database. We're seeing real intelligence being integrated directly into operational technology and hardcore business strategy.
Right.
It's moved from being a fun novelty to becoming the actual machinery running the business.
Which brings us to a scenario that I suspect is going to feel painfully familiar to you listening. Whether you are the founder of a startup or you just work inside a mid-sized company.
Oh, absolutely.
Think about how overhead accumulates in a business. It never happens overnight in one dramatic moment.
No, it creeps up on you.
It's totally insidious. It's a software subscription over here for the marketing team. It's another platform over there for the sales guys. Your team grows a little bit, so you add a few more per-seat licenses to your CRM.
And individually, month to month, those costs feel totally manageable.
Right, just a cost of doing business. But then, 3 or 4 years down the line, you take a step back and realize a massive chunk of your operating budget is just hemorrhaging into tools that somehow became the required standard.
It is the proverbial boiling frog scenario, except instead of a pot of water, you are sitting in a cauldron of software licensing fees that just keep inching up.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because the sources give us a highly specific, frankly shocking anecdote that illustrates this exact boiling frog dynamic.
Yeah, this story is wild.
There is a story documented here about a small tech startup that recently decided to bite the bullet, sit down, and aggressively audit its expenses.
They were looking for fat to trim.
Exactly. And they got a very uncomfortable wake-up call. They realized that their Salesforce contract alone was costing them roughly $40,000 a year.
$40,000 in recurring sunk costs.
Just for the CRM.
Right. And remember, we're talking about a relatively small, agile tech startup here, not a sprawling multinational corporation.
And here is where the mismatch becomes glaringly obvious. When the leadership of this startup looked closely at what their team was actually doing inside this $40,000 system every day, it was incredibly basic.
Totally standard stuff.
They were tracking sales deals in a visual pipeline. They were attaching text notes to customer accounts after a phone call, and they were generating some basic weekly reporting on conversion rates. That's pretty much it.
Yeah, and yes, those are absolutely essential business functions.
Of course.
But they are not functions that require a massive, top-tier, multi-layered enterprise platform to execute. They were essentially driving a military-grade tank to the local grocery store to pick up milk.
I love that analogy. It's so true.
What's fascinating here is how they chose to solve this mismatch, because it breaks from every traditional business playbook.
Well, historically, the alternative to paying for that expensive enterprise system was to just downgrade.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. You cancel the contract, export your data, and go back to running the business on a fragile, chaotic web of spreadsheets.
Ugh, the nightmare of spreadsheets.
We all know how terrible that is. Formulas break, version control's a nightmare, data gets lost. But they didn't do that.
No, they didn't.
Instead, their head of finance decided to experiment with an AI application builder called Lovable.
The head of finance, I love that detail so much. We are not talking about a senior software engineer or a DevOps wizard here.
Not at all.
We are talking about the person who handles the spreadsheets and the balance sheets.
That detail is the entire crux of this shift. And according to the sources, within just a few hours, this finance lead had built a working prototype of a lightweight internal CRM.
In a few hours, that's insane.
Right. And it was tailored exactly to the company's specific workflow.
Yeah.
Down to the exact terminology they used internally.
I have to play devil's advocate for you listening, because if I hear someone built a CRM in a few hours, my immediate reaction is that this sounds a bit like science fiction.
Sure.
Or at the very least, it sounds like a toy, not a real business tool. How functional could this prototype actually be?
That is a very fair point of skepticism.
Ah.
Did this prototype replicate every single advanced predictive analytics feature that a giant like Salesforce offers? No, of course not.
Right.
But it didn't need to. It handled the absolute essentials for their specific team size and their actual operational needs. It had the pipeline, the customer notes, the basic reporting.
And I actually used it.
They tested it out internally alongside their legacy system. And it worked so seamlessly that they made a radical decision.
Yeah.
They completely canceled that $40,000 Salesforce contract. They migrated their entire team to the custom-built system. And the punchline here is the economics. Their hosting and infrastructure costs for this new custom micro software run about $1,200 a year.
That is just imagine that reality for a second. I really want you to put yourself in the shoes of that founder.
It's life-changing for a business that size.
Imagine looking at your quarterly balance sheet and suddenly finding $38,000 in operational leverage just because you fundamentally changed your approach to how you acquire software. That is a game-changing amount of capital for a small team to get back. You could hire a junior employee, fund a massive marketing campaign, or just extend your runway.
It completely alters the financial physics of a small business. You are shifting away from a fixed, punitive, per-seat licensing model, which is a sunk cost regardless of how much you use the software.
Right.
And moving toward a variable cost model based entirely on actual compute and API usage. You only pay for the exact amount of data you process.
That's a huge distinction.
It is. But to truly understand why businesses are so eager to make this leap now, we have to look at a deeper structural issue the sources highlight, which they call the vendor trap.
The vendor trap. It sounds ominous, but anyone who has ever wrestled with a clunky company portal knows exactly what it feels like.
Oh, painfully well.
The premise 4AI World lays out is that enterprise software always comes to market promising convenience and frictionless productivity. And sure, in many cases, it does initially deliver that.
Right, at first.
But it introduces this incredibly subtle, almost insidious structural problem into your company's DNA. Over time, organizations end up adapting their own internal workflows to fit the rigid architecture of the software, instead of the software adapting to fit the unique way the organization actually works.
We see the symptoms of this trap play out constantly across different departments. Think about the psychology of enterprise software design.
Okay.
These massive platforms are usually designed to appeal to the C-suite executive who is writing the check. They want high-level, beautiful dashboards.
Right, the flashy stuff.
Exactly. But the actual end user, the sales associate or the data entry clerk, is left navigating a clunky, non-intuitive interface.
That's so true.
So the sales team is forced to learn the specific, arbitrary logic and terminology of the vendor's CRM. The operations team has to create elaborate, manual workarounds just to deal with the limitations of the platform's reporting features.
I've been there. pulling it all into a spreadsheet anyway because the system won't do it.
Exactly. And the finance team finds themselves adjusting their own internal billing processes just to match how the vendor's platform demands data be structured. You aren't really running your business anymore. You are running your business the way a software vendor in another state tells you to.
You essentially become a captive tenant in someone else's digital building, and you aren't allowed to move the walls.
If we connect this to the bigger picture of how the SaaS industry operates, the actual pricing model of enterprise software heavily reinforces this dependency.
Because they charge per user.
Right. Most of these platforms operate on that per-user pricing model we mentioned. That means the more successful your business is and the more your headcount grows, the more you are penalized financially.
It's a tax on growth.
It really is.
Yeah.
You hire 5 new salespeople, and suddenly your software bill jumps by thousands of dollars a year, even though the software itself hasn't provided any new capabilities. It acts as an automatic software tax that scales up right alongside your growth.
You're paying a premium for the privilege of being locked into their rigid way of doing things.
Yep.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though. This specific dynamic, the bloat, the rigidity, the software tax, is exactly what is being disrupted right now.
Finally.
We are seeing the rise of a completely new category that the sources are calling micro software. And it is being driven entirely by this new toolkit of AI-assisted development environments. We mentioned Lovable earlier in the start of Anecdote, but the sources also point to platforms like Replit and Bloat as major players in this space.
And it is vital to understand that these aren't just slightly better auto-completing coding tools for software engineers.
Wow, this is different.
They represent a fundamental paradigm shift in what a completely non-technical team can output. Instead of buying a massive monolithic platform that is bloated with hundreds of features your team will ever touch, teams can now use these AI builders to generate small, highly specific, purpose-built applications.
So for the listener who hasn't played around with these tools yet, how does that actually work? Are they staring at a blank screen trying to learn Python, or is the experience completely different?
The user experience is completely different, and that is the magic of the reasoning engines we talked about earlier. Tools like Lovable or Bolt act much more like having an incredibly fast, highly skilled senior developer sitting right next to you at your desk.
Okay.
You describe what you want in plain, everyday English. You might type, "I need a clean interface that tracks our client invoice dates, flags any account that is more than 30 days overdue in bright red, and sends a Slack message to the account manager."
Just typing that out normally.
Just natural language.
Mm-hmm.
The AI takes that natural language, writes the underlying code, spins up the user interface, and deploys it. It does the heavy lifting.
That's incredible.
And for teams that want to get a bit more into the weeds and tinker with the actual architecture, platforms like Replit provide an environment to do just that, even if you are just learning.
Which means the output isn't a terrifying multi-year software deployment. It is a lightweight database spun up on a Tuesday afternoon.
Exactly.
It is a simple dashboard that pulls exactly the 3 metrics your CEO actually cares about and literally nothing else. It is an internal workflow automation that perfectly matches the slightly quirky, unique way your specific team prefers to hand off a project from design to engineering.
You build exactly what you need.
The output is a piece of micro software built to solve one specific operational bottleneck flawlessly.
The agility this injects into a company is staggering because businesses are living organisms. They change. Macroeconomic conditions shift, product lines pivot, workflows evolve. In the old enterprise model, if your team's workflow changed, you were in for a world of pain. You had to submit an IT ticket to a backed-up internal department.
And wait 6 months?
Or worse, you had to hire an external consultant at $500 an hour to come in and execute a massive reconfiguration of your Salesforce or Oracle platform.
Yeah, totally.
But with microsoftware and AI application builders, the friction is gone. When the workflow changes, the tool itself could be modified almost instantly.
Because you just talk to it again.
Exactly. You just tell the AI, hey, we actually need to add a secondary approval stage to this pipeline. No vendor support tickets, no massive consulting engagements. It is just another quick, natural language iteration with the AI.
That perfectly sets up the core philosophy we really need to dig into here, because it changes who actually holds the power in a company. There is a very simple business truth highlighted in the texts. The people who are closest to the daily workflow are almost always the people who understand it the best.
It seems like common sense when you say it out loud, doesn't it?
It really does.
The finance lead is the one who intimately understands exactly how a messy invoice needs to be categorized and moved through the system to get paid on time.
Yep.
The sales manager is the one who actually knows the subtle nuances of how a deal progresses through their specific weird pipeline.
Hmm.
The frontline operations team sees exactly where the vendor's standard reporting completely breaks down and fails to capture the reality on the warehouse floor.
But historically, those people, the actual operators doing the work, they had zero ability to influence the tools they were forced to use every day.
Not at all.
They just had to accept whatever generic one-size-fits-all platform the IT department or the executive team handed down to them.
This raises an important question about how human capital is fundamentally going to be deployed moving forward, because that impenetrable barrier between the operator and the software engineer is completely dropping.
It's a huge shift in dynamics.
We are witnessing a massive democratization of software creation. If you are an operator today and you understand the underlying mechanics of your business process, if you know exactly how data needs to flow from an initial client intake form over to a legal contract and finally to an accounting invoice, you can now sit down with an AI tool and literally generate the software that reflects that exact perfect process.
You just build it yourself.
Yes, you no longer have to force your elegant, efficient workflow into someone else's clunky prepackaged system.
I want to push on that for a second on behalf of the listener. If the finance lead is suddenly building the customized billing software, what happens to their actual job? Are we just turning our accountants and our sales managers into amateur IT guys? Because that sounds like a recipe for distraction.
That is the danger if the tools were difficult to use. But because the AI reasoning engines are so advanced, the time investment is minimal.
So it's not taking over their week?
Not at all. The sources point out that this isn't about turning accountants into software developers. It is about elevating the accountant's role entirely.
Oh, I see.
The human in the loop stops acting like a glorified data entry clerk, just mindlessly copying and pasting information between three different rigid, unyielding platforms. Instead, they elevate to become the architect of their own efficiency.
Architecting their own efficiency. That's a great way to put it.
They are designing the bespoke system that they themselves are going to use, which makes them exponentially faster and more valuable to the company.
That is the real aha moment of this entire deep dive. The software finally molds to the human instead of the human molding to the software. It is incredibly empowering.
It really is.
But as with all major technological shifts we cover, we do need to maintain a sense of reality here.
We do. We have to look at the boundaries of this disruption.
So what does this all mean? Is this the absolute end of the road for enterprise software? Are the massive giants just going to pack it up and go home because everyone is building micro software?
The short answer is absolutely not. And the sources are very clear on maintaining this nuance. Massive enterprise platforms, like the ones we've been critiquing a bit today, they remain incredibly valuable, but specifically for large, highly complex organizations.
So the scale matters.
Massively. When you reach a certain scale, say a Fortune 500 company, your fundamental needs change. You need intense, multi-jurisdictional compliance controls. You need incredibly advanced integrations across dozens of global departments and thousands of employees.
Things an afternoon AI prototype just can't handle.
Exactly.
Right.
You require highly complex, auditable reporting systems and very rigid, enterprise-grade security and permission management. A lightweight AI prototype built in an afternoon is not going to replace the backbone of a global banking institution. Those legacy platforms are built to handle that kind of massive, sprawling, heavily regulated complexity.
So the giants are not dying anytime soon. But for the small teams, the rapid growth startups, the agile mid-market companies, the game has completely changed.
Entirely.
Because for years, business leaders in that massive middle space faced an incredibly frustrating binary choice. It was a lose-lose scenario.
Yeah.
You either bite the bullet, drain your budget, and pay the exorbitant enterprise tax for a system that is way too big and complex for you. Or you try to hold your business together with digital duct tape, relying on a fragile patchwork of spreadsheets, Zapier integrations, and manual data entry.
It was a choice between overpaying for bloated features you didn't need or suffering through the daily friction of inefficiency.
And the huge takeaway from everything 4AI World is tracking is that AI application builders have finally created a viable third option. They have paved a middle path.
Yes.
You do not have to choose between the punishing software tax and the chaotic spreadsheets anymore. You can build your own highly focused, custom-powered tools that do exactly what you need them to do, and nothing more.
You are building bespoke digital infrastructure that is perfectly tailored to your current size and workflow, with the ability to instantly and cheaply adapt it as your company grows and changes.
As we wrap up this deep dive, the main thing we want you to take away and apply to your own strategic thinking is that operational flexibility is quickly becoming one of the most valuable competitive advantages a modern business can possibly possess.
Without a doubt.
The ability to design your internal systems around how your company actually operates rather than how a distant vendor thinks you should operate, and to do it without paying those bloated recurring enterprise costs is a modern superpower.
Absolutely.
It is the defining difference between a team that is bogged down in administrative friction and vendor lock-in and a team that is flying because their tools were built specifically for them by them.
It really is a paradigm shift in how we think about the cost and creation of software. And it leaves me with a thought that I think is worth chewing on long after we finish today.
What's that?
We have established that large legacy enterprises still absolutely need these massive platforms for compliance and scale right now. But if today's startups and lean teams can suddenly build their own custom infrastructure from day one for a fraction of the cost, what happens to that multi-billion-dollar enterprise software industry 10 or 15 years from now?
Oh, wow.
What happens when this new generation of lean AI-empowered businesses scales up into major market players without ever entering the traditional vendor ecosystems in the first place? Will they ever feel the need to migrate to the giants, or will they just keep iterating their own micro software all the way to the top?
That is a phenomenal question, and it is definitely something we are going to have to keep a close eye on as this new era of business building unfolds. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us on this deep dive today. We hope it gave you a fresh perspective on where the engine room of business is heading, and maybe even sparked an idea for how you can reclaim some of your own team's operational leverage. Until next time, keep questioning the standard and stay curious.